Hi, my name is Anna Stone, and I had a near-death experience on November 8, 2016, when I was 38 years old. Previously, before I'm in my former life, I was a research scientist. I worked for the government contract for the Department of Defense and for DARPA, and analytically, there's nothing to any of this near-death stuff. It's hogwash. It's not scientific. It doesn't hold up under scientific scrutiny. So even though I was attracted to things like tarot and, witchcraft maybe, as a kid, I still never really lived in it wholeheartedly. I guess I dabbled. But I always, went back to science. And even though I had a lot of weird experiences growing up that some may call paranormal, I guess, I still managed to explain all that away with rationalizing it out. So, I'm in a bad time in my life, really bad. I was drinking and really being not the best person, and I was in a really toxic marriage. And I had this bleeding that started, and I didn't know what was wrong with me, and, it was just my cycle was just going and going and going, and I didn't know why, what was going on. And actually, the day this happened, I joked to my family that I was bleeding to death. Then the next thing I remember is I'm in the hospital, and I'm told that I passed. I fainted, I guess, and I was losing blood pretty rapidly, and I guess I had an ectopic pregnancy that had ruptured, and I lost, at this point, almost half of the blood volume in my body. Then I started to feel the sensation that it's hard to describe, but it was this extreme panic of something being very wrong, very, very wrong. And this feeling of intense, just like I was gonna explode, I could feel all the cells in my body doing something, and it was not comfortable at all. And the minute it was unbearable is when it was just poof, and I'm not in my body anymore. And I, go up to the ceiling, just like a balloon, I guess, and I realized, oh crap, I'm not in my body anymore. And I could see myself, after I was out of my body, that's when I heard the machine do the flatline sound. And then I'm watching the people in the room come and try to resuscitate me, and I had no attachment to it at all. I had my one thought, conscious thought at that moment was, so, that was it. It was really flat effect too, there was no real emotion behind it. It was just well. And then at that moment, I realized, oh crap, my snarky personality is still intact. And I'm out of my body, so I'm still me. That's weird. I don't know what I was expecting. I never really pondered this before because, again, they shouldn't be possible. And I'm watching them work on me and stuff, and I'm hearing some of the comments that were a little upsetting, one of the doctors had commented on how in my records, it had said that I had a former addiction to medication, that, what do we expect? I was just, some drug addict. But I've been off of those for 8 years at that point, so I was highly offended. But I wasn't offended at the time. I was offended when I came back. Let me clarify that. But at some point, I heard the flatlining and all that. But then, it was the realization of my children. Okay, where are my kids? Are they gonna be okay? And I was instantly taken to my oldest daughter, who happened to be in class 210 miles away at her college in Fresno. And I see her there, in her desk, taking an exam. And I just was okay, she's fine. And I was well, what about my little one? And she's taken right back to the hospital waiting room, where I see my Lucy, who was barely 2 at the time, and she's playing Legos with Legos. And I'm okay, she's fine. And then I realize that if I'm looking to the right, I'm looking in the hospital, but if I glance to my left, I'm not in the hospital anymore. I'm somewhere else. I can't really describe where that somewhere else is, but it's not on Earth like this room. It's yellowish white kind of, I guess it's a room. I don't really see walls that support that, but I just know it's a room. I don't see any tunnel. I don't see any dead relatives. I don't see any religious figures. I'm by myself, but I'm not by myself. It's I could feel other things around me. And I realized a couple of things. I realized that 1, I'm enormous, I am everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I realized I don't have a body. I don't have eyes. I don't have ears. I'm not in physical form anymore. I can see in 360-degree vision, I can see behind me, on the side, to the side, above, below, just by thinking it, which was interesting. It didn't freak me out. It was just packed. I'm in this room, I guess. And I just all of a sudden look up, and now I look in front of me, rather, and there's another person in. It looked physical to me, like standing in front of me. And it was me, though. It was very strange. It was like my physical self, but not quite. So, it looked like me, literally. I mean, it's like my twin, but... So there's a little difference in features, a little difference in, hair or something, but it's me. And I'm very aware that this is a version of me. I knew that I was gonna talk to me. I don't know how to say that. And I stood there, or I'm there. I don't know. I'm not standing because I'm not in a physical body, but I'm there. And I get one message to me, transmitted telepathically, and it's the word no, in nope. And that's something I would say, instead of saying no, I'm just saying nope, in my regular days, regular life, that's how I speak. And I got that message, and I instantly knew that meant no, I'm not staying, and I'm going back. And that was what happened. I suddenly, got all of my enormousness, got focused into this one stream that went shooting back into my body, via my navel or my belly button, and it hurt really bad. It actually was physically painful. And at this point, I saw the tunnel. Going back in is when I saw, I guess, a tunnel. It was just for me, I think I understand that it was focused back into my navel, so therefore I had to be in, a beam, rather than being dispersed like I was previously. What I can say is that it felt like if someone was holding your head underwater and you were gonna drown, and you were right at that moment of opening your mouth and breathing in that, breath of water instead of air, but then they let go and you managed to pop up and breach the surface and gasp for, that air that you need so desperately. That's what happened. I shot up on the table and, gasped, this, really loud and very shocking to everybody in the room, gasped for air. That's what brought me back, was this, I guess it was the pain mixed with the lack of oxygen, that, made me shoot up and awaken on the table. And I knew instantly what had happened. I knew I had died. I knew I had left my body. I was very upset with this because this shouldn't happen. It has to be my neurons, misfiring as I died, and it's all hallucinations. So, and I start asking the staff, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you say something about my medical records and how I used to do? I had a problem with this medication? And they were just... Well, first of all, they were, all in shock. They had stopped working on me and were, filling out some forms. And also, I was still hooked up to the EKG monitor, and there was no beep ahead of time to warn them that I was coming back. So, I think it really shocked this one guy. He looked very concerned, he was kind of standing there frozen. And I asked the doctor again, I'm did you say this about me? About? And he was how could you have heard that? And so, at that moment, it sunk in that, oh crap. Because I was hoping they were gonna be no, that has to be hallucination, lack of oxygen to the brain, whatever, But they validated that. That's when I started realizing, oh crap, this is bad. This is what happened. I died, and it was real. Then I asked him how long since they had called time of death, and it had been just under 6 minutes. Not that long, but it definitely resulted in a lot of things changing in my life. And that one message I got from myself on the other side has, unraveled and become a lot of other messages for me that have also helped change the course of the direction of my life and everything. So, after I got released from the hospital, I started really thinking to myself, how horrible that I wasn't more upset about my children. I hadn't yet realized the fact that when we're on the other side, we don't have negative emotions. So, I hadn't gotten that yet, I hadn't figured that part out. So, I was really beating myself up about how I hadn't really focused on, who was going to take care of my children, what was going to happen to them, the things that as a parent you would consider here while you're on Earth, right? Later, I found out why I was like that. Well, because we don't have those emotions over there, but also because this had already been planned. This is something that I had already written out for myself because I had seen ahead of time that I might get off the rails a bit in my life, and this was a reset, like a karmic reset, is kind of what I like to attribute it to. So, I came back, and I had this undeniable urge to do differently in my life. I can't really explain it. The first change I noticed was that I could no longer drink alcohol. And I mean, I literally physically could not drink it. My doctors. You don't have any clue why this would be a thing. This is not a side effect that we're aware of, you know, but take it as a blessing, right? So, I did. So, I ended my literally of the addiction to alcohol within 6 minutes. Like, literally, in 6 minutes, it was over, and I've never. And that's the end of it, God. But after that, it was like things started changing very rapidly and significantly. So, I had pretty much no direction where I was going in my life. Like, I'd been doing science, but it wasn't very fulfilling for me. And so, all of a sudden, I'm like, I need to be a teacher. And so, within a couple of months, I've got a job teaching children that were troubled youth, and I found this to be super rewarding for me and definitely felt much more in line with, like, what I'm supposed to be doing. And my whole thing has been about, like, being of service to other people. And it's helped me. That's enough of my story. Thank you for listening.